Yes, welcome to another episode of Shem Golf Academy Lessons. We continue with our home practice series, and today we talk about putting. In the first part of the putting series, I talked about grip and posture and alignment. On this one, I want to talk about specific things every good putter does. In this episode, I want to talk about key concepts and principles that make someone a good putter. In this episode, I want to talk about key principles and concepts that make one a good putter. All right? So, every putt is a straight putt. That's something every good putter knows. Every putter, every putt is a straight putt. You begin with that, you end up being a great putter. Okay? So even when we are reading a breaking putt, we are reading for a straight putt. That's why we read on the high side. Start the ball on the high side and let gravity take its course. But when you are reading that putt, you are reading it not to the hole, but to your highest point on that break. So every putt is a straight putt. So the key principle number one is that you need to start your putt on your line. All right? You have to start the putt on your line. Otherwise, you're dead on arrival. So what does that mean? Is that when you're practicing, here at home, the floor is flat. So basically almost every part is flat except that on this mat it's a little higher over there, so there's an uphill, and depending on how somebody has stepped on it can really break the part a little left or right. But at home, if you have a mat, you practice putting straight. If you can get a mat with a line, even better. If it doesn't have a line, then draw a straight line. And just putt and make sure that your putt stays on that line. Okay? So that's the first principle. Start the putt on your line. So what can you do at home to make sure that you're starting your putts on your line? As I mentioned first, if you have a mat that has a line, it will help you. Two, I've just taken two sleeves of balls here and I've put it just wide enough where a ball can pass. All right? So, as you're putting, you've read your line, just try to make sure that that ball passes between those sleeves without touching it. See, that one touched the sleeve, it went offline. That one touched a little bit, but it was firm enough, it went through. That didn't touch at all, and it went in. So practice and get that feedback, immediate feedback, whether you are starting the ball on your line or not. All right? So that's principle number one. I've given you two tips you can do. Use a line on the mat or use a gate. On the putting green, the same thing can be mimicked by just putting two tees about a foot ahead of your ball. On this principle, you don't want to practice too much from a long distance. So anywhere 3 to 5 feet is a good practice zone for starting your ball on the line. Okay, so you're working on your stroke and making sure that ball starts there. So regardless of what your stroke is, I personally teach straight back, straight forth. But regardless, even if you have a little curve on your stroke, it doesn't matter what your style is. Just make sure that ball starts on the line that you want it to start. The second principle is this: hit the middle of the putter, the sweet spot. Okay? So there are two I'm going to give you, because when you hit the sweet spot and the putter is actually square to your line, you're not going to get offline. So I'm going to give you two drills or two tips on how you can practice this. The first tip is take, the powder used to, the foot powder used to apply on your feet so that, on your shoes so that they don't stink. If you have that, use that. If you don't, you're at home, use wheat flour. All right? So, over here I have some wheat flour on this bowl. I'm gonna put the wheat flour on the back of the bowl. Just the back. Make sure there is wheat flour on the back. All right? I'm gonna place that ball, making sure that wheat flour is directly behind what I'm going to pat. I'm gonna remove this so that they don't get in the way. Of course, you can combine those drills with the gate and this. And when you pat, it will leave a mark on the face of your pattern, and it will tell you whether you're hitting the middle or the toe or the heel. Okay? So that's a little drill that you can use to determine where you hit your ball, or if it's in the middle of the club. And something else that you can do, I have another pattern here that I've already prepared, is to take rubber bands. Okay? I have rubber bands tied on the pattern, and I'm just leaving the sweet spot here middle. So, when you go to pat, you will get immediate feedback of whether you are hitting the ball in the middle of the face or not. Because the moment you hit the rubber band, yes, the ball might go in, but you'll hear a different sound. Okay? For the most part, hitting the rubber band will deflect the ball, but once in a while you might hit and it gets in. But the sound that it will make will be different. Okay? Now, this brings me to another tip. When you're practicing putting, try as much as possible to use the balls you use when playing. As much as you can. Why? Because every ball, every brand of ball will give you a different sound on your putter. And you want to get used to the sound yours gives you when you hit the sweet spot. So if you can, practice with the ball that you use when playing. Okay? That's a very small, minor detail, but it helps you psychologically when you hear that sound and you know I made a good putt. Whether it goes in or not, it doesn't matter. Okay? As long as you hit the sweet spot, it started on your line, it's a good putt. The third principle that I want you to know is this: the speed of the putt determines the line. There's always this debate about what's more important. Is it the speed or is it the line? What should you pay attention to when you're putting? Well, if you actually think about it, the line is not a straight thin line when you're putting. The line is a lane, okay? You have a margin of error of about 4 balls. So your putting lane is 4 balls wide. So the pace is what determines, especially on breaking putt, the pace is what will determine if the ball goes in or not. Okay, even on a straight putt, if you hit it down the line and the ball stops right on the edge, right there, it's a bad putt. Okay, so ideally you need to determine the line you want to hit, the speed you want to hit the ball, and that will help you determine the line you choose. If it's a breaking putt and you want a dying putt, okay, so you'll use the biggest breaking point, okay? If it is a breaking putt, but you want a little pace, you'll take off some of the break. That becomes very beneficial, especially on uphill putts where you want to charge it a little more, okay? You don't want to come short. So you want to take off some of that break, so you will. That will determine the pace. So the pace is more important than the line. If you have the right pace on that putt, they say you have more chances of making it in than if you have the wrong pace, because you can miss the line slightly. There's a margin of error, you can miss the line, but still it goes in if it catches the lip or if it dies at the right spot. Okay? So use the first thing when you're reading putts and when you're practicing putts, I tell my students is make sure you have enough pace for that putt to go about a foot past the hole. Then you can be a little aggressive with your lines because you know you have given it enough pace. There's nothing as bad as leaving a putt short, whether it's for birdie, par, or saving bogey, it doesn't matter. You'd rather get past the hole by a foot and then make the comeback. At least you gave it a chance. All right? So work on those 3 principles, and I've given you. One is that every putt is straight, so practice a lot of straight putts. Okay? Practice a lot of straight putts, even when you go to the range. Practice a lot of straight putts. The drill is to use a gate. Right there, just make sure that whatever the gate, in this case, you can use books, you can use 2 sleeves of balls. It doesn't matter. A foot out and make sure that that ball passes through that gap. You can have a line, and on some courses, they actually draw a line on the practice green on at least 1 or 2 holes where the putt is straight to help you. Okay? So that gate drill will help you. Make sure that that putt is starting on line. If it doesn't start on line, it's dead on arrival. All right? You need to make sure that you are hitting the center of the club face. Use some powder on the back of the ball for you to determine where you're hitting it, or just use 2 rubber bands and leave just enough space in the center for the sweet spot where you're contacting the ball. It will give you feedback. And third, but not least, is focus on getting the right speed. The right speed determines the line. So even when you're out there on the course reading the green, and that's why sometimes I laugh when I see caddies pointing at the hole at where the player is supposed to aim at. It's only the player who can determine how fast they hit the ball. Okay, how firm they hit the ball, that will determine the line. Because the caddy has no idea. They can help you choose the highest point of, of the break, but it's you to determine how fast and what line you need to follow. All right? Well, there you have it. You have a few tips you can work at home. And for those who say they don't have a putting mat, there are so many other surfaces you can use. I've actually tried this on a yoga mat. As long as it's smooth and it's flat, you can putt on. There are some normal house carpets that you can actually putt on. So it's no excuse. You don't necessarily have to have a form of putting mat to practice putting at home. If you don't have a putting mat with a hole, what I do is I take a water bottle, the 1 liter water bottle I cut, or a cup, and I lie it down somewhere, so that becomes my hole. So I try to putt into it. Okay? Sometimes I'll just put a coin, and that will demark my hole. If I can putt and go over that coin, then I'm sure that my stroke is good. Okay? So not having a putting mat in the house is not an excuse. You can improvise and practice putting, because it is the most, to me, important part of the game. On a par 72 hole, if you play level par, everything on regulation, you'll have 36 putts, and you'll have the other 13 clubs to the other 36 strokes. That just emphasizes the importance of putting. So practice, 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 and give emphasis on putting. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please do so, as I continue to provide you quality content in a simple way that you can understand and implement wherever you are. Don't forget to hit the bell button so that you can get notifications. And I highly welcome feedback, comments, questions below. Let's make this channel interactive. Allow me to get to know you as much as you get to know me as I teach and I provide this information to you. Until next time, have a good one.